1918, Manchester, New Hampshire, a boarding house on the west side. Down in the cellar, the floor was dirt. He went down there and dug a hole deep enough to stand in. He put a chair by the hole, he put some blankets on the floor, and he went upstairs and he got his wife and his baby. They put the baby on the blankets, he let her stand in the hole, and he got on the chair. Now this is a good thing. He took a strap, he put it under her chin, it's a good thing, and began to pull. And he pulled like this on her neck until her feet went off the ground. Why were they doing this? He was beginning to teach her how to strengthen her neck and jaw so he could perform a trick on the stage of the Palace Theater and other theaters around the country that he called the T-spin. He invented it. It involved sticking this apparatus in your mouth, gripping it, then he would get up on the rings high above the stage, and they did it on this stage. He would get up there, and she would get up there, and then, she'd maneuver her rings, get that thing in her mouth, and spin like an ice skater. But she was hanging by her teeth, good God. In this way, my grandparents were concocting a scheme to get themselves out of the ambuscade. They wanted to become acrobats and travel, just like America's Got Talent today. There was vaudeville, right? It was part of the variety show scene, and they had a plan. What was wrong with Manchester? Pretty much everything, if you were young and ambitious. That was the time when the largest textile complex in the United States was here in Manchester. Everybody pretty much worked in the factories if you weren't disabled from having worked in the factory. The hours were long, it was dirty, it was loud, it was deafening in fact. They had a fabulous blacklist, it was very systematic. They intentionally recruited immigrants from all over the world so that the workers were less likely to organize. When my grandfather was in the mills, 28 languages were spoken. So they wanted out. Manchester also had the highest infant mortality rate in the country at the time. There's a big expose about that. The Ladies' Home Journal did something on the subject of child labor. It was a great stepping stone for their parents who came from Three Rivers, but as first-generation immigrants here to the United States, they wanted something better. They never considered anything but an act that involved feats of strength. Why was that? Because their hero, and the hero of every French Canadian at that time, was Louis Cyr, a strong man who traveled the world, making Canada, French Canada, famous. At the Chicago World's Fair, he lifted 583 pounds with one finger. All over New England, he ran gyms. He was an entrepreneur, an amazing guy. There were two-story murals outside of him lifting weights. He was amazing. Another amazing person that they emulated was Lillian Lietzau. We've never heard of this woman. She was an acrobat from Germany, an immigrant to the United States. She became a citizen here. She would take silk ropes, slip them under her arms, and flip, core strength alone, all the way up to the top of the big top, because she started in the circus, and then she performed in theaters. And then when she got up there, they'd start playing the Lone Ranger song, and she would come down really fast. My grandfather copied that. That was his finale. And my grandmother copied her costumes. But when you have a plan, a big plan, sometimes you need a little luck. In their case, World War I ended with all that carnage. And the refugees who were coming over to the United States before the war. 1 million a year they came before the war. They started to be able to go home. Political refugees, economic refugees, and as a result, it opened up the possibility here, for the first time in a long time, for the US labor movement to start going out on strike. And they did. There were strikes all over the country. And in Boston, vaudeville workers who had 2 unions, stagehands and performers, they went out on strike. A theater in Boston called Mancheser, called right here to the Palace, and said, "You got talent? I need something. We need performers." And he referred my grandparents down to Boston. And that's how they got their start. That was their first contract. They traveled to Chicago, to California, to Mexico, to Canada for 28 years. These are all stories my family's told time and again. I heard them from my grandparents' mouths. But one thing that somehow never got explained was where that teaspoon came from. Right? Where did he get that idea? Good God. No one seemed to know. And then I was in New York, and I saw Degas' painting, Miss Lala and the Cirque Fernand. It depicts a woman hanging from the ceiling by her teeth. It looks like she's in a cathedral, but actually the Cirque Fernand was this gorgeous indoor circus that had just been built in Paris when she performed there in the 1880s. Miss Lala was a Romanian mixed-race performer, circus background. She came to Paris, she was 21 years old, and she performed her entire performance hanging by her teeth. This was called in the circus the iron jaw. So she opened the act by going up, being hoisted up to the top of the ceiling. But what I want to tell you is her finale. For her finale, 4 men dragged a military cannon across the stage, just this. They get to her, she's hanging by her knees off of a trapeze with this thing in her mouth with a hook on it. They lift up the cannon and hook it to her, and you think that was enough, but no, they light the fuse. This was Miss Lala. So this is where one person who made the teaspoon famous, for sure. My grandparents wound up having a fabulous career in vaudeville. They rubbed elbows with celebrities. They traveled all over the country. They never learned to pray in English, but they did learn to speak English. They got to see the world beyond Manchester, which was definitely their ambition. And when my mother was 16, that little baby on the floor, she joined the act. And ultimately, it was my father who busted it up, because she fell in love and wanted out, and that was the end of the traveling routine. People wonder about my relationship to the iron jaw. My work history is speckled. I, have had many a job. I've been hired and fired and blacklisted and this, that, and the other thing, but I never considered the iron jaw for myself. However, my family, right now there's a child who is the great-great-great-grandchild of my grandparents. And she's 5 years old and competes as a gymnast. Her parents have asked me not to tell her about the iron jaw, and I won't promise that. After all, I'm sure you understand the family tradition must go on. Thank you very much.